The year 2024 ended with heightened tensions in India's neighbourhood. On Christmas, that is 25th December, Pakistani airstrikes targeted 7 locations in Afghanistan, killing 46 people, including women and children. This was in retaliation to a 21st December attack by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or the TTP, in South Waziristan, which killed about 16 Pakistani security personnel. In retaliation, the Taliban struck several points in Pakistan. The cycle escalated further on 29th of December when an explosion at the Taliban Ministry of Interior killed about 10 personnel. Now, this attack was claimed by the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan, which aligns with Pakistan. Meanwhile, Baloch insurgents side with the Taliban in their fight for self-determination, and this adds another layer to the chaos. Earlier in March 2024, militants bombed and attacked Pakistani forces at a border post, prompting airstrikes that, according to the Taliban, had again killed civilians. This relentless cycle of violence reflects a complex web of conflicting allegiances and power struggles. At its core lies the fractured identity of South Asia, shaped by British-drawn borders that divided the subcontinent into modern states of today: India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and China. These artificial divisions have bred ongoing territorial disputes, further complicated by ideological and geopolitical factors over time, which is over decades. In the Afghanistan-Pakistan region, these tensions are exacerbated by jihadi doctrines rooted in Sharia, often exploited by state actors to destabilize their rivals. I'll give you an example. Pakistan's use of such groups against India has boomeranged, with the country now facing these destructive forces it once fostered. This volatile dynamic underscores the enduring instability of South Asia, where historical wounds continue to fester. But first, what has been the doom of the Durand? The Durand Line, or the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, was drawn during the colonial rule and has remained a contentious issue since Pakistan's formation in 1947. The border divides the country's Pashtun population has never been formally recognized by any Afghan government. The long-standing grievance this division has created has never been acknowledged, neither by the Taliban of the 1990s nor the Taliban 2.0 government that emerged in 2021. Historically, Pakistan allied with the Afghan Taliban to suppress Pashtun nationalism, leveraging the Haqqani network, the potent ISI-backed Taliban faction, and I'm sure you've heard about that. However, by the time the Taliban returned in 2021, the geopolitical landscape had shifted. The rise of the TTP in 2007 introduced a new threat. Initially a Taliban offshoot, the TTP pursued 3 goals: undermining Pakistan's control over Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, imposing Sharia law across Pakistan, and opposing coalition forces in Afghanistan then. Though eventually banned by Pakistan, the TTP persisted, supported by the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, despite official denials of involvement. Relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan have deteriorated since 2021. In 2023, the TTP established a new base in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, training suicide bombers and rebranding themselves under fronts with names such as Tehreek-e-Jihad Pakistan, which actually grants them plausible deniability. Likewise, the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, or the ETIM, and the Majid Brigade have joined forces with the TTP, deepening regional instability. Now, the Majid Brigade, which is aiding the Baloch insurgency, highlights the interconnected nature of these militant groups that rebrand themselves by changing names. Now, for Pakistan, a failed state already, grappling with internal challenges, these developments expose the limitations of its hollowed-out institutions. Decades of fostering militancy to achieve strategic goals have backfired, as the country now contends with the chaotic outcomes of its own policies. A stark reminder of the axiom, you reap what you sow. But the global theater as well remains very fragile. As the United States ended its 2-decade bloody intervention in Afghanistan, the shift in global dynamics saw China's influence rise, intensifying its rivalry with the US in the Indo-Pacific region especially. Meanwhile, on the continental front, China has been arming Pakistan and Bangladesh, with reports suggesting the planned delivery of about 40 J-35 fifth generation stealth fighters to Pakistan within 2 years. While some of this may be propaganda, because of course it's coming from China, China's intent to strengthen its foothold in India's neighborhood is undeniable. You see, the thing is that China under Xi Jinping is aggressively pushing for a unipolar Asia. And it's doing it through weapon deals, acquiring strategic ports in the string of pearls, and advancing Belt and Road Initiative projects nearly in all of India's neighboring countries except Bhutan. In Afghanistan, China's cautious stance towards the Taliban is primarily driven by security concerns. It aims to suppress the Islamic State Khorasan province, which is the ISIS-K, and East Turkestan groups that threaten Xinjiang, whose distinct Muslim identity Beijing seeks to erase. Now, Russia, another major actor in the region, has also been vulnerable to terrorist threats from such groups and has taken a proactive role in Taliban led Afghanistan, especially after 2021. Now, following the Taliban's 2021 takeover, Russia quickly established diplomatic ties with the country, with its ambassador Dmitry Zernov openly engaging Taliban. In fact, they were the first to openly engage the Taliban and declaring that there was no alternative to it. He, in fact, went to the extent of calling the Taliban's reasonable guys. This partnership reflects Russia's historical interest in the region, of course, and aligns with its shared anti West stance that China not only shares but also leads. In effect, the Russia Taliban closeness underscores a shared resistance to Western influence, with Beijing often fueling such situations to advance its own global design. So, the key manipulator here is China. But then there is more to complex intersectionality, and I'll unravel that. The Taliban's arsenal largely comprises rudimentary weapons and abandoned US stockpiles from 2021. Comparatively speaking, Pakistan's military strength far surpasses that of the Taliban. However, continued bombing of TTP targets is not really in Pakistan's long term interest, as it really exacerbates Pashtun alienation. Additionally, Pakistan hosts millions of Afghan refugees for decades, and it also controls Afghanistan's trade flows via the Karachi port. Now, the trade leverage is a big leverage, but it could change. How? If Afghanistan diversifies its trade routes to Iran's Bandar Abbas and Chabahar ports, which is the part of the International North-South Transport Corridor or the INSTC. This corridor aims to connect India, Russia, Iran, Central Asia, and the Caucasus. And yet, INSTC faces hurdles, including sanctions on Russia and Iran and its heavy reliance on a road based trade route. Now, India, on its part, has also promoted Chabahar as an alternative by a tripartite arrangement between India, Afghanistan, and Iran. But whether it can replace Karachi completely remains uncertain. A shift in trade routes would significantly diminish Pakistan's influence over Afghanistan. But then there's also the human cost. The human cost of this geopolitical struggle is tragic. Artificially drawn borders have divided people, fueling a cycle of violence over overlapping claims, identities, and aspirations for self determination, which is often misguided by religious fanaticism. The Taliban's second regime has dashed Pakistan's aspirations for greater strategic depth in Afghanistan. Contrary to Islamabad's expectations, the Taliban has neither condemned India's application of Article 370. And please remember, this has been a critical pillar of Pakistan's decades old theatrics on Kashmir. And nor has it acted against the TTP, whose attacks on the Pakistani military have intensified since 2021. While the Durand Line remains central to the Afghanistan Pakistan conflict, today's security challenges transcend borders. The region is ensnared in a web of extremist ideologies, tribal loyalties, and institutional decay, undermining governance and rule of law. Regional bodies such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and its permanent structure that fights terrorism is not really going to offer much respite. India faces a precarious task of securing itself from a fractured Pakistan, home to uncontrolled jihadi groupings of varying degrees, an increasingly radicalized Bangladesh, and the refugee crisis on its porous borders. Meanwhile, Beijing exploits this instability to push for a unipolar Asia under the Communist Party of China's leadership, contrasting India's vision of a multipolar world. We need concrete strategies and actionable solutions, not mere condemnations or kadi nindas. India must reimagine its defense capabilities and act well in time. I will be back to discuss how India navigates a fragile and fraught neighborhood. Stay tuned.